Greetings, seekers after enlightenment. Yes, it is the Irish fellow. And I am back with another philosophical exposition for you. This one is entitled Gray Man, Becoming Invisible in a Surveillance Culture. In any populated area, there will be people that take an interest in whoever sticks out. No matter who they are and what they're looking for, it's in your best interest to not look like a victim. To ambush and opportunistic predators alike. Someone who is a victim stands out as lost, sick, scared, uncertain, or just unfamiliar, both in appearance and behavior. Now, the brain contains a filter for all the sensory input your body receives. It's called the reticular activating system. It's located at the base of your brain and right at the top of your spinal column. It filters all of your sensory inputs except smell. The RAS scans that feed and determines what's important and what should be paid attention to. This allows the brain to conserve energy by not having to process all that data at once. The brain is always looking for the unusual. Fast movement, threatening movement. Movement on a vector that will intercept you. Bright colors, human shapes, reflections. Bright light, implied movement, and other similar things that stimulate the brain. Now, the RAS will ignore areas of continuous color, shadow, dull natural colors, slow movement, and all vector movement that is not intercepting your position. So your mind isn't overloaded with everything. What we want to do is use our knowledge about how the brain works in order to make ourselves invisible, practically. When someone glances your way, they make an unconscious assessment of you. And it's filed away in the back of their mind. Now, if you are not exceptional looking in any category, you will quickly be forgotten. And that's just what we want. Because when shit hits the fan, anyone who looks prepared becomes a target. Being a gray man, therefore, is a valuable skill. You can take refuge or leave a bad situation easily. You're less likely to be targeted by police and targeted by criminals. So, there's a survivalist blogger named Selko. He has a website where he shares his extensive experience of living through the Yugoslavian War. Well, I'm an old-timer. In the 1990s. Some of his more prepared neighbors gave away supplies during the first few weeks. But then just weeks later, many of these same people were attacked and killed for their goods. And the thieves justified their actions, saying, "Oh, well, you're the one that brought this on, but because you anticipated it, or you're taking advantage of the situation." So think back to high school. If you were the one that studied and were prepared for the test, you were hated and called a nerd. I was right there. So, you have to practice being gray. And it's a lifestyle that begins before shit hits the fan. In fact, if you're a parent, maybe you should keep the full extent of your preps away from your children so they're not accidentally doxing your plans. Now, the first rule of prepping is just like the first rule of Fight Club. You don't talk about it all the time. Don't go bragging to the neighbors, because guess who they'll turn to when their food runs out. Never let anyone know how prepared you are. They shouldn't know about your extra food, water, or supplies. They shouldn't know about your security and defenses. Everything should be hidden well enough that even your nosiest neighbors have no idea what you have on your property. Now, when you're building up your inventory, order in increments. You don't want huge volumes of stuff either showing up by a delivery service or falling out the back of your truck as you pull up and park right on the street where everybody can see. In fact, you should immediately recycle all of your shipping containers. Cut the labels off. That way, no one sees what you have. And if you're bugging in, you've got to remember to not stand out there as well. Keep the house dark. If there's a neighborhood power failure or a citywide failure, don't be blazing all the lights in your house, because you're just advertising that you are one of the new rich and you're about to get attacked. Keep your house as dark and quiet as everyone else's in the neighborhood. Don't let the smell of food come from your place at all hours. Food smells travel a long way. And people from miles around will know that you've got that chuck roast that's on the barbecue, and they're going to help themselves. Don't dress in tactical clothing. You have to look as normal as possible. Oh, and another reminder, when you make purchases, bring them home on the down low. If you can, drive your vehicle right into the garage and close the door so no one can see what you have. Or do your shopping in an hour when you know you won't be under observation. This also applies when you're going to the target range to practice. Don't let people see you loading up a bunch of guns and ammo, because they'll know, they'll either say, he's armed up, so we shouldn't mess with him, or he's only one man, we can overpower him and take his stuff. If you look as desperate as everyone else, they won't suspect you're going home to a decent meal, security, and relative comfort. Now, when you're on the move, you want to blend into the crowd. Now, that means I have to make some changes myself. I love wearing my robe of any style because it gives me a sense of confidence and empowerment. But for the time being, I'm going to have to abandon that so I look a little more nondescript. Because you have to admit, somebody wearing a floor-length robe and bumping jazz music at 100 decibels is going to attract attention. Now, you need to adjust your clothing to circumstances. Like, don't wear a hoodie when it's 100 degrees out. Don't wear sunglasses when it's overcast. Wear camouflage in the woods. Wear muted colors if you're in a small town. Remember, bright colors are easy to track in a crowd. Now, if you're tall and you want to appear shorter, you could wear long shorts, monochrome colors, or horizontally striped clothing. Flat shoes, leaving your shirt untucked, and slouching can all help you look shorter. Also, avoid logos or emblems. They attract attention. Also, don't wear jewelry. Look as boring and drab as you possibly can. Now, you should work out ahead of time the type of people you're going to be hanging around with. Not necessarily in a social situation, but to anticipate the kind of crowd you're going to be around. You want to plan your general appearance based on that. Sure, people will still see you if you're wearing muted colors, but you won't stand out and attract attention. The same goes for your backpack. It should be a neutral color, nothing bright that'll stand out in a crowd. The less obvious that you even have a backpack, the better it is for you. And some people suggest that you carry a get-home bag. If shit hits the fan when you're out of town, you may need emergency supplies and extra cash to get home. So a good idea is to have that and a rain cover for whatever bag you're carrying. So if it is tactical looking, it's concealed. Use pockets and such to hide your tactical gear, because you don't want anything sticking out that would attract attention. Extra camouflage never hurts, even if it's as much as a couple pieces of duct tape or masking tape on your bag. So it looks beat up. Throw some dirt on it and smear it in so it looks like it's a beat up piece of crap. And carry an item or two with you to change the way you look. Carry an extra hat or a jacket. Or even a different pair of shoes. Confrontation must be avoided at all costs. Keep your head down and act like everyone else. If someone seems aggressive, do your best to stay away from them. Even when you're doing something relatively normal, make it look mundane and boring. Make it appear that you're always just going with the flow of the crowd. So you can follow the crowd and at the same time gradually move in a direction that you want to go. If you need to move away from the main crowd, try to hang around the perimeter of another group that's heading in your general direction. You don't need to get so close that you make them nervous that a stranger is part of the group. You're just sort of there at the edge. And I would say you have to consider this. There may come a time when you need to go from being gray to not being noticed at all. Practical non-existence. At that point, you need to camouflage and completely disappear. Ducking out of sight at the first opportunity is good. Using chaos as a distraction is better. So, assuming that you are trying to minimize your presence, you have to consider what you're doing online. You may be a pro in being anonymous in public, but that doesn't do any good if you're running your mouth like Chatty Cathy on crack when you're online. Anything you post on the internet is basically there forever, unless the elite scrub it, and we've seen that in action. Anything you use at all can be used to hurt you. So be mindful of posting anything online. I mean, your personal details are collected all the time. Now, companies like Facebook, fuck you Zuckerberg, use it to make ad revenue off you, and you don't get compensated. But nefarious people can also use it to collect data on you for doxing, to steal your identity, or to find you and administer a double tap. So, protect your online identity. Now, I'm just about at the point after this latest round of Facebook censorship, I'm not even gonna like things anymore, because even if you do that, they can use that to construct a pattern of your behavior. I just show up to steal memes. Now, it's tough in this modern culture, but you have to get off the digital grid if you really want to disappear. That means giving up your smartphone, getting off social media, paying for purchases with cash or gift cards. If they have to be online, use secure websites and a VPN. Also, Proton Mail. All of these things are stuff I'm going to be doing in the near future. Now, as far as your gear goes, you have to remember and keep reminding yourself that tactical gear invites attention. So, if you have to carry stuff like that, use everyday items. I have a large variety of bags of all shapes and sizes. So, I could take my Glock 19 and put it in a bicycle bag. Now, who would expect a gun to be in there? You know, school bags, flimsy, run-down backpacks in a neutral color. Diaper bags. How about a guitar case? Remember the old meme that the mobsters in Chicago would put their Tommy gun in a violin case? Yeah. You also have to make sure your clothing or gear does not produce sound. So, you don't want your keys jingling with every step. And even fabrics, some make noise. Those of you old school people who remember wearing corduroy know exactly what I'm talking about. So, what does a gray man actually do? Well, he's an observer. He watches people in his surroundings and then does the same. It's an application of chameleon skill. Now, act like you're supposed to be where you are. Avoid eye contact and conversations. Leverage your peripheral vision as well as decoy objects, like holding up your phone. If you look like your phone is 3 inches in front of your face and you're staring at that, well, people see all the time and they're not going to pay attention to you. Meanwhile, as Cat Williams says, you're using your periphery to scope out the area. You have to practice situational awareness, or what I call practical paranoia. It's being conscious about your surroundings, events, and sudden changes. It allows you to quickly judge and make decisions. And all of these elements and a whole lot more make up your skill set. So, and if you think you don't have that skill, well, all you have to do is go to Dutch Brothers get yourself a cup of coffee and just sit there and watch the crowd to see how people react. So now, shit has hit the fan, and you decided it's time to bug out. Now, you gotta remember, the people at the greatest risk of attack are ones that the group feel are opposed to them. And it doesn't even have to be you getting up in someone's face with an AK-47. You could not just look as enthusiastic as the other miseducated fools that are out there rioting. So, you have to be careful. You have to plan your route. You need 3 separate routes to get from A to B, because you don't know what's going to happen. What if the police suddenly throw up a checkpoint right there at the corner where it's like, well, I always drive down to this street and make a right. The police have taken up the whole block now. So you better have an alternate route, or you may be spending time at the Gray Bar Hilton. So, especially in a chaotic situation, people are going to cluster around choke points, the police station, hospitals and urgent care, convenience stores, gas stations, banks, drugstores and pharmacies, places like that. Maybe someone's going to show their ass and break a window, and then instead of riot season, it's looting season. And what's going to happen if the cops roll up and you're right there? That's why you need to nope the hell out of that situation. That's called strategic avoidance. To go gray, you have to have the traits of a chameleon, an actor, and a native. Now, one thing you have to do if you're going gray is to get rid of old habits. If you're always taking the same route to work every day, and you're always stopping at that same store to get your coffee and a donut, well, you're easily traced. And someone with an axe to grind might take you out, and not on a date neither. So don't always take the same route. Change it up. Go faster or slower. In fact, take the scenic route. And although, I know red pill men are accused of not caring, but we have empathy. We just have it turned inward to self-reflection and self-discovery. And it may be tough for you to actually turn your back on someone in a bad situation. But you have to consider, why do you want to go where the trouble is? I mean, if it's one poor female and 4 thugs, and you suddenly have the white knight instinct to intervene, you may end up with a cap in your ass, and you didn't help at all. You're just another victim along with her. So sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. Now, one thing you have to consider, especially in the city, is video surveillance. And it's almost a knee-jerk reaction to put cameras everywhere. So, we'd be able to fight crime. But it doesn't work. It hasn't been proven effective. How many rioters have been arrested because of video footage? Now we know, because the elites are in charge, they're using that technique to find all the people involved in the January 6th incident. Oh yeah, they're going hardcore to find them. But Antifa and BLM, they're not trying, even though a lot of them could be easily identified. And plus, monitoring video screens is boring and mesmerizing. After about 20 minutes, your attention has dropped well below measurable levels. And it's very easy for you to miss something that's right in front of your face. And it's subject to abuse. In 1997, a fella in Washington, D.C. was caught using police databases to gather information on patrons of a gay nightclub. He was gathering information so he could blackmail them. And during the civil rights movement, the FBI and other organizations, they used surveillance tools to attack people fighting for civil rights. And the operations were entirely illegal. There were cops in Michigan using the database to help themselves or their friends stalk women, threaten motorists after traffic altercations, and track separated spouses. And in fact, now I'm not trying to be racist here, but in Great Britain, they said that black people were between 1.5 and 2.5 times more likely to be surveilled than we would expect from their presence in the population. And you can't forget voyeurism, just flat out spying on people. In one incident, New York City police were in a helicopter, and they were supposedly on patrol, but they were actually using an infrared camera to check out a couple getting frisky on a roof. And you consider there's no limits or controls on how these cameras are used. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable search and seizure, but it's been circumvented. You consider how chilling it will be if there are cameras everywhere. What conversations are you going to talk about in public? You don't want to call attention to yourself, because next thing you know, the the SWAT team, will be breaking down your door. You have to remember that the government doesn't feel itself under any restrictions anymore about spying on American citizens. So folks, it's not easy, because everything you do is tracked. But I am working on diminishing my internet footprint. And when I return, it will be with a greater degree of anonymity. But even that's no guarantee. Not all VPN companies are trustworthy. There are some that have folded like a weak poker hand and turned over data to the government when they said, "Who is this person?" They've been recording your emails since the 1950s, looking for keywords that could implicate you in some crime. So imagine after the Boston Marathon bombing, if you had pressure cooker and backpack in your internet search, suddenly you were on the list. Even if they had nothing whatsoever to do with domestic terrorism. All it takes is someone's suggestion, and suddenly you are a person of interest. And remember, a cell phone is a tracking device. Have you noticed that you can't take batteries out of cell phones anymore? That's because people were taking the batteries out to defeat the tracking feature. So, if you're going to keep that cell phone, maybe you should invest in a little Faraday cage. Something to think about. So, brothers, I really could not do this justice in this brief overview, but I wanted to make you aware of the situation and let you know that there are things you can do that will help. You are not a programmed drone. You are and continue to be an awake red pill man of wisdom and action. And what you do privately is no one's business but your own. Do not let the government steamroller you into obedience or submission. I don't know about some of y'all, but I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And I demand that I be treated as a human being. So, until the next time, I still say, when one teaches, to learn.